Downloads we have. I'm always amazed at the number of people that are able to find their way into our particular part of the.
You gotta update your data. We're way over 11 million.
Well, it was the last time I looked at it. What is
We're
it
like
now?
20 million.
Woo! We're at 20 million?
Yeah.
Last time I looked, it was 11. I'm not really on the numbers here, people. 20 million downloads. Well, that's good news. I'm glad to hear that. Now, today's guest actually doesn't need any introduction, but I want to play for you. Do you have it ready, Mr. Producer, Miss Producer? Ready? Play this introduction. I want to talk to you about our special guest, Dr. Jordan Rubin.
Jordan Rubin, co-founder of Ancient Nutrition, is one of America's most recognized and respected natural health experts. He is the New York Times best-selling author of The Maker's Diet, 25 additional titles, and his latest work, Essential Fasting. At the age of 19, after living an active, completely healthy childhood, Jordan was suddenly diagnosed with Crohn's disease. He went from being a 185-pound athletic young man to 104 pounds and in a wheelchair. A year later, in the midst of a life or death struggle, Jordan met with a man who encouraged him to follow a health plan taken directly out of the pages of the Bible, a plan proven through history and confirmed by science. Jordan committed himself to follow God's wisdom for health and life, and in just 40 days, his health was transformed. Today, Jordan's mission is to transform the health of this nation and the world, one life at a time.
Well, that's it. Now you know Dr. Jordan Rubin. And I've actually been to Dr. Rubin's office in his what would you call it? The experiment. It's like Edison's laboratory. He's working on constantly coming up with new solutions that God gives him to health problems that are based on kind of biblical insight. Dr. Rubin, come join the program. There you are. Good to see you, my friend.
It's great to be here. I hope to contribute to 20 million and about 100 downloads. So let's get 100 downloads today.
Let's get 100.
We'll crank it up.
We'll crank it up with 100. That's like Mercedes makes fun of me when I come up with ideas. She says, "Well, that idea will make hundreds of dollars."
Hundreds of dollars.
Hundreds instead of the multiplied millions that need to be made. Listen, with Ancient Nutrition, which my wife was a big fan of yours. When I first told her I was going to be meeting with you, she was like, it was like a rock star thing because the women, particularly in my world, are all using these incredible products. How long has Ancient Nutrition been at work here? 7 years. So we first launched in May of 2016. So we're a little bit over 7.5. Wow. So and you are always am I not correct in saying that you're always working on trying to find new ways, like Edison, of coming up with combinations of things that get remarkable results? Is that an exaggeration? That was the impression I got when I saw your operation.
Well, it is partially true. At this point, God has rescued me from many personal health issues, and that usually stimulates a product or even a company. But I've asked God if I can start creating products for other people's issues primarily and not my own. That would be my goal. But Lance, to your point, we have a pretty big vision. It is to heal the planet, feed the world, and eradicate disease. And it can all be accomplished through biblical principles. And so we like to dream big, but I constantly am stimulated by God's word and the challenges that we face in our modern society to help solve some of those problems. And I always want to do it in a way that glorifies God. So that's the best way to describe that. And it usually ends up as a book or a product or something in between. But there's some cool things I can't wait to share with your audience, Lance, that I've never shared before, which is actually the subject of something I'm working on in the future. So that's what I'm excited about is we sent you over some teasers that I think will make a huge difference, particularly in our aging population. And I refer to an aging population, I include myself, who my young teenage children are constantly telling me they're faster, stronger, overall more athletic than me, among other things. And so I'm trying to close that gap every day.
Well, that's good. God gave you that competitive spirit for a reason, my friend, and you're not going to let them show you up. So in terms of what you're discovering with the 50-year-old and older crowd, and we've got younger people, obviously, that are here. My whole team, Carl is here, Mercedes, my staff is all in, the millennial age group. But what do you run into for the folks that are older that you are finding remedies for, and give me some insight as to the problems that you're seeing as a health professional.
Well, here's something I'm going to share more at the Lance Wallnau Summit in South Florida. I'm excited that, Lance, you're giving me an excuse to go close to my old stomping ground in South Florida. But I think this is really interesting. We've got the baby boomers, particularly those on the younger spectrum, and maybe the older Gen Xers. Think of sort of 45 to 75-year-olds that are rapidly realizing that when they look in the mirror, they don't love what they see. I call it the sag. And a lot of women will recognize this. And I talked to a female author and television personality earlier today. She had some funny anecdotes related to this, but essentially think about it. Your face begins to sag. We talk about gravity, right? You wave and your arm begins to sag, and then you look at your behind, and as the woman I talked to today said, I'm buttless. So if you think about, and I know this is a kind of a funny way to think about it, but what's happening is as we age, we lose two primary sources of tissue in the body. We lose connective tissue, that's collagen, cartilage, etc. That makes up our skin, hair, nails, digestive tract, joint, ligament, tendon, and bone. And then we lose our muscle, our skeletal muscle. And this happens at an accelerated age. Here's a horrifying statistic. After the age of 40, we lose 8 pounds of muscle, 8% muscle per decade. And between 70 and 80, we lose 15%. So if you do the math, that's 47% of our muscle is gone by the age of 80. And I know some people say, well, I don't even know if I'll live till I'm 80. I'm just focused on living well now. But that's a pretty staggering statistic. But here's the biblical version of that. Caleb, who said, I am stronger than I was 40 years ago, and I'm ready to conquer the promised land. This was when Caleb was 85 years of age. And first and foremost, I quote a set of scriptures every day. It's really God's promises to me. And one of them is that at 85 years of age, like Caleb, I'm going to be stronger than I was at age 45. So number one, claim the promises of God. Number two, treat your body in a way that you can take advantage of the promises of God. And I'll give you two quick diagnostic techniques to determine how well and long you're going to live. And you might say, Jordan, if it was that simple, why haven't I heard this before? But this is totally true. If you look at somebody's grip strength, I'm talking about a good stern handshake or a pull-up, if you can do it, or hanging from something, that's one, to determine how strong you are. Number two, what is your waist circumference measured at your belly button? Those are two telltale signs of how long and how strong you will be as you age. So these are just really easy, common sense techniques to determine where you're at now. And then we'll talk about strategies to ensure that you can be a Caleb when you're 85 years of age, because who wouldn't want that?
85 years of age.
Quick question on the waist circumference measured at the belly button. Is smaller better or is larger better for strength?
It's a great question. Smaller is better.
Okay.
And here's the reason. The abdominal fat that we carry, called visceral fat, is highly inflammatory, and it is very indicative of the major diseases that cause mortality to increase, primarily heart disease, cancer, of course, diabetes, which leads to heart disease. We want to remove that visceral adiposity, otherwise known on grocery store tabloids as belly fat. That is really, really critical for men, even more critical for women. And then, of course, as I mentioned on that grip strength side, I think we all realize that if somebody is strong and has that strong handshake when they're 70, 80, 85, that's something that stands out. But then we also know from parents and grandparents, when they have a very frail grip, that's very indicative of their strength and therefore their skeletal muscle. So these are just very important observational data points that you can use to determine if you need to get your rear in gear. Of course, as I mentioned, as we age, our rear disappears. So whatever rear is left, time to get it in gear.
Okay. So if you're 60, then you've probably lost like maybe 16 to 20% of your muscle. Is what do you can you regain any of that, or what are you proposing here for those that are hearing you and are kind of shocked and saying, "Oh, well, I didn't know that. What can I do?"
Absolutely. Before I answer that, though, I want to paint an even bleaker picture, because after the age of 20, most of us begin to lose collagen at an extremely alarming rate that probably mirrors or exceeds muscle mass. The reason I say that, Lance, is we've got two issues if we're 60. Our connective tissue, our cartilage, our collagen is probably decreased 20%, and our muscle is increased 16%. And for most people, your bone density is decreased. But the good news is you can build all of it back. There is research that shows 80 and even 90-year-olds building muscle, preserving and adding connective tissue integrity, as well as strength. So you can absolutely do it at any age. The problem is we just don't take the steps to do it. And there are a handful of health secrets that we can share that can help you preserve and increase your collagen, connective tissue strength, as well as your muscle strength, and even your bone strength. And frankly, all of us know somebody who's had a fall, broken a hip, and then they're not long for this world after that. Right. It's because, again, that's indicative of their overall health. And so let's talk about how we can improve those areas, shall we?
All right. And I want to go into them. I want to remind people we're dedicating a whole event to focusing on this. The Lord told me this is the priority right now for my audience of like the 20 million downloads, is to focus on this. And it's 40, I like that, 45 to 75. That's perfect. That's a perfect demographic. And you go to lancewallnau.com/summit, because we're dedicating this time to you having what we call level 10 living. That's level 10 physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional resiliency for the times that are coming. Instead of obsessing about the prophetic apocalyptic era you're living in, realize God put you on the earth for such a time as this, and you're not supposed to be a poster child for falling apart. You're supposed to be an able minister of the gospel in whatever sphere you're in, doing what God called you to do. Dr. Rubin, talk to us about what we need to do.
Well, there's a handful of things I'm going to recommend. Number one, and this is really in no particular order, you likely need to increase your protein. And I think that the recommendations that I've shared for over 25 years, and certainly many, many, many others, is that the protein recommended daily allowance, according to the USDA, is dreadfully inadequate. It usually will tell you to consume between 50 and 60 grams of protein a day. I recommend that if you want to rebuild and certainly preserve skeletal muscle, which is primarily made up of proteins, you need to target 0.75 to 1 gram of protein per pound of desired body weight. Now, I know that's a long equation. Let's make it simple and talk about the 1 gram per 1 pound of desired body weight. Now, you might say, what's desired weight? Well, if you're a female and you're 160 pounds, but you know you should weigh 140, that would be the target. And it sounds daunting, but it's not impossible if you focus on protein. And you might wonder, why focus on protein? Well, somebody knew when they named protein how important it would be, because the word protein comes from the Latin word proteus, which means of primary importance, or that which comes first. So it's natural, in my mind, that we should focus on building our meals around protein and try to get that really, 30 to even 50 grams of protein per meal, especially if you're a male and you want to hit 150, 180 pounds of protein. So I know, Lance, this will probably spur on some questions, because not everybody knows how to count protein grams, right?
Totally. I mean, I don't.
So
I only know broccoli has a lot more protein than people think. That's what I did learn from one seminar.
Well, not as much as you might be alluding to. But
That's why I have other people teaching.
Yeah. Let me give you some quick examples. This is just so I'm not going to get into all the nuances of dairy products because I believe dairy can be an excellent source of nutrition. But let me give you some protein guidelines. A glass of milk, and certainly there is better quality milk than other milks, for sure. A glass of milk from an animal, not almond milk or macadamia nut milk, is 8 grams of protein. 8 ounces of milk, 8 grams of protein. 1 ounce of cheese, you'll like this, 10 grams of protein, maybe 9 depending on the cheese. So you with me already?
I'm with you.
A palm of your hand size of chicken, beef, fish, or any animal product is between 20 and 25 grams. And 1 egg, large variety, is 6 grams. So if you think about it, cheese, an ounce is 10. Milk, 8 ounces, 8 grams. A palm size of some type of meat, 20 to 25 grams. And an egg is about 6 grams. I say that in animal food terms because it is the easiest, most efficient way to get protein. And I'm going to share this, Lance, at the summit. It's the first time I'm ever going to share it, so I can't even share it now. But I'm going to share with the audience the smartest meal that ever lived. And I'm going to challenge believers that if they knew that there was a certain dinner or configuration of food on the dinner table that was recommended by the wisest man in the world, according to God, would they eat it? And I'm going to challenge them to do just that. Let me give you a little clue. Meat eating in the Bible happened as frequently as anyone could get meat. And I would even say this, that Jesus either served or consumed a meal pre or post resurrection that involved meat. In this case, it was fish, right? If you remember scripture. And Abraham asked Sarah to prepare meat for either the representative of God or the angelic host, whoever that was. There's different sort of theological beliefs there. We know for sure that Solomon ate meat. We know that David sent at minimum dairy products and fruit to his brothers that were fighting the Philistines in the army. The list goes on and on. What I'm here to tell you is that the idea that the Bible promotes a plant-based diet is very brief period of time, or at least brief time in our Bible, which would predate the flood. The Bible also shares in Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14, most of 2 chapters on the meats we should eat and those we should not. So I have debated this endlessly. There really shouldn't be a debate. In the Bible and biblical times, anyone who could get meat would get it. I know people are going to say, well, what about Daniel? He went without meat for 10 days. He did, but it was likely due to the fact that the meat he was served was either detestable / unclean, or it was sacrificed to idols or still had blood in it. So Daniel was not a vegetarian, but he did forego the king's delicacies, which were likely deemed by God as inedible, which is another topic. But 1 gram of protein per desired pound of body weight, I promise you, if you do this, you will begin to feel stronger. And I believe your percentage of muscle will increase and fat will decrease. But it is going to take some planning and maybe even some journaling, although there are many websites online which will give you exact protein counts per food that you're consuming. If you consume a packaged food, it has it right on the label.
Wow.
Wow. It's hard to believe how time is flying. We only have like 8 minutes in this.
That's why it's so good.
It's so powerful. You guys have got to come to this summit. I'm sitting here at the front row seat. All right, so I know everybody on my panel has questions. I'll let you have one, but I got a question. Go ahead.
Well,
Mercedes.
I know we all have questions. So, I see these protein shakes everywhere. When you're talking about consuming protein, what do you think, Jordan, about protein shakes? Good, bad? What are you thinking?
That's a great question, Mercedes. And I would say this, that the protein powder that you should consume would be a type of protein you typically can't get in your diet. And I know we alluded to products that I've developed that 50 plus years of age youngsters, as I said off the air, would be interested in, but I would prioritize supplemental protein to sources you don't easily get in your diet. And that's where collagen comes in. I think collagen is a great source of protein because it doesn't necessarily build your muscles, but it helps to preserve the integrity of your connective tissue, your skin, hair, nails, joints, ligaments, tendons, and your digestive tract. And we created a product at Ancient Nutrition called multi-collagen protein. The reason being is that we wanted to create the multivitamin, so to speak, of collagen, because your body has dozens of types of collagen. There's different collagen in your nose, that's in your ears, that's in your eyes, that's in your joint, that's in your forearm, your elbow, your bones. So multi-collagen protein has 10 types of collagen and is clinically studied to help support joints, ligaments, tendons, flexibility, mobility, even reduce fine lines and wrinkles, crow's feet, etc. And I'll give you an example of how great it is. My mother, who is in her mid-70s, consumes it every day, and my 19-year-old son, who plays college football, consumes 4 scoops every day. And I have other children who do their various activities, and I'm making all of them smoothies. My wife gets it in her coffee. It's easy to sneak into beverages, foods, even spaghetti sauce, you name it. But back in the old days, I'm Jewish by ancestry, and my grandmother would serve us roast chicken, and she would always come out late, and I would come and find her in the kitchen gnawing on the bones and the ligaments and tendons of the chicken. She was the youngest of 7 in the Ukraine growing up, and she didn't let anything go to waste. But by doing that and consuming good old-fashioned Jewish chicken soup, she was able to get collagen in her diet. We don't get it today because we eat all chicken nuggets and filet and sirloin and burgers. So this is a missing link to our health, and it's a great supplemental source of protein in addition to all of the dairy, meat, and eggs I talked about, which are muscle-building protein. So it's a great balance, and that's one of the keys to stop the sag.
Wow. So let me just say this now for all you folks that are saying, I need that collagen anti-sag product.
The multi-collagen protein product.
The multi-collagen, like a multivitamin. I love that. AncientNutrition.com. If you use the promo code Lance20, you can get 20% off. Dr. Jordan was very kind to give us that. AncientNutrition.com. Use promo code Lance20, get 20% off. And what about, I mean, you've got so many powerful other products that my wife is always talking to me about, man. You're like, I'm telling you, like a rock star. What about the protein? Is there, I'm trying to get the protein now, and I'm suspicious that I'm going to have to wait till I get into your class to hear the optimum superfood diet. But do you have something for protein?
So the multi-collagen protein has protein, but in addition, I mentioned grandma's chicken soup. We developed the first protein powder from bone broth. And I know you might think, wait, you're talking about taking chicken soup in a powder? Well, good news for you. Whether you like vanilla or chocolate, we've got bone broth protein that fits the bill, 20 grams per serving. We also have savory options. I like these, especially this time of year, warm in a mug. We've got chicken soup, we've got tomato basil, and we've got butternut squash. You can either add some things to it to make an amazing soup to consume by spoon, or you could consume it in the mug. Bone broth protein is absolutely amazing. And in fact, Lance and the gang, that was our very first product at Ancient Nutrition in 2016. Wow. And it took the world by storm because almost everyone realizes through their lineage that good old-fashioned chicken soup / bone broth will pretty much help anything you can think of in the body. So that's another great way to get 20 grams of protein per serving. It's also something I make for my children. My son, who's 16, is trying to build muscle. He's on a push-up program. So he does 2 bone broth protein smoothies or shakes every day. So it really depends on what your goals are. But multi-collagen protein and bone broth protein are great protein powders. And what I love about them, these are sources of protein that are not easily consumed in the average diet. You can get dairy, you can get meat, you can consume eggs. Why consume that in a powder when you can eat the food? But we will not consistently make a bone broth that takes 24 to 48 hours with all the messy cleanup. So this is the first ever bone broth you could consume in seconds.
Wow.
And there's no mess.
And I just want to ask a quick question on the smoothie. So what goes into the smoothie? I'm a big smoothie guy.
We know.
So you have and what else is it just milk you're putting in there, or special kind of milk? What kind of milk are you using?
All right, Lance, I'm going to let you in on a little secret that is going to make some people have their eyebrows raised and other people will cringe. So I'll first say this: you can mix bone broth protein in water or any beverage that is either dairy or dairy substitute. You can use yogurt, you can use almond milk, macadamia nut milk, cow's milk, goat's milk, you name it. What I do, because I have a farm, which you've seen, you called it Edison's Laboratory.
Yes.
It's Edison's Laboratory inside of Edison's farm, or Old McDonald's. Edison's Laboratory inside of Old McDonald's farm. There you go. I'll create the picture for you. So I get milk right from our animals. Yes. If God wanted milk to be pasteurized, I always say, or separated, skimmed, he would put a pasteurizer and a cream separator on the udder of a cow or a goat. That's for another program, because these foods are super nutritious, but believe it or not, illegal in certain places. Yeah. But I use raw milk, and I actually use raw eggs or raw egg yolks. And I've been doing that far before I saw Rocky. It was 20, 30 years now. I've been consuming raw eggs. Now, listen, I don't want you to go out and buy store-bought eggs and start, cranking them down like Rocky and getting them all over your sweatshirt. But there is a safe way to consume them. Most people wouldn't want that. So simply you can add it to your favorite milk or milk alternative. You can make smoothies with some honey, with maple syrup, with fruit. Here's the great news. AncientNutrition.com has about 50 or 100 smoothie recipes. So you will not have any issue finding ways to use them. And by the way, we also have more than smoothie recipes. We have recipes for almost every meal or snack using multi-collagen protein and bone broth protein, so that you can sneak it into your family's life. Imagine somebody consuming rice and you're already going to use either water or broth to sort of heat the rice, right? To cook it. Imagine sneaking in 10 to 20 grams of protein, bone broth protein pure, which is sort of chicken tasting or chicken soup flavor, et cetera, or multi-collagen protein, which is tasteless. Imagine getting 10 to 20 grams of protein in the rice or cereal that your kids are consuming without them knowing it. That's pretty awesome. And I mentioned multi-collagen can be mixed in coffee. I do that for my wife, Nikki, every morning.
Wow. I have to ask you a question. Doesn't that affect the coffee? Because I'm a coffee drinker. I'll admit it. I'm a coffee. People know that. And it doesn't affect the flavor of the coffee?
Here's what I will tell you. Nikki tells me when she drinks coffee without multi-collagen protein, it tastes weird. So I will say this. It might slightly affect the viscosity in the beginning, which is kind of the thickness, but most people don't taste it at all. Here's my recipe. So we do about 12 ounces of coffee, pretty strong. I will add some cream, organic cream, a little bit of ghee, which is grass-fed butter, cinnamon, coconut sugar, which is really from the coconut palm, and then 1 scoop of multi-collagen protein. And that's whatever you want to call it, a collagen latte, but I make that for Nikki every day. I don't personally drink coffee, but I make that for her, and she doesn't like coffee without it at this point. So that's the best way I can answer that.
Wow.
I'm sold. Mercedes, one bonus question before we have to go.
It's more of a bonus comment, because I feel like people under 45 have a lot of food sensitivity. So I'm talking with our producer in the back. We're both commiserating about our food sensitivities. So I really struggle. I can't have whey protein. Anything that's cut with soy or whey will make me incredibly sick. So I end up sometimes, because I'll do sometimes the protein shakes, I'll get stuff with like pea protein, pumpkin protein. But truth be told, there's kind of only so much of that I can consume because of all these different food sensitivities. So this bone broth protein sounds fantastic. I feel like I can take that. So I just want to throw that in there, that if you have, an under 45 in your house, I mean, all of your kids, Joy has food sensitivities. Carl has food sensitivities. I do. I mean, it's wild. It's really wild. Well, I don't even need to lump myself in with your kids here, but I was just saying, and Chelsea does too, our producer in the back. So there's something going on with what we've been fed. So these are great, healthy alternatives that Jordan has. But I say all that, and let's make sure if you want to go get it, I'll re-say it again for the people on the podcast. It's ancientnutrition.com. And if you use the promo code Lance20, you're going to get 20% off. I'm a big believer in signing up for things like auto ship. But really, I want people to come to the conference because it's this type of wisdom. These are the types of experts we're bringing you in. I cannot believe I had Larry reach out to Jordan and say, hey, on a long shot, we're doing this health conference. Do you think Jordan can come? And Pam, his assistant, writes back and says, Jordan said, for Lance, absolutely. I don't even really do these things anymore, but for Lance,
I know.
Absolutely.
I'm pleased as punch that you're doing this, my friend. I really am tickled. And I think it's overdue because, like I said, when I went in your laboratory, I told people, this is the Edison of nutrition. If anybody can change global health and get this to the point where world governments can recognize. I mean, there are governments that are out there that are interested, and they've got agriculture in some places that hasn't been totally modified and messed with. Mm-hmm. What a game changer for the health of a nation. I mean, your vision is not unrealistic. There are places in the world that if they knew what you knew, I think that they would have an impact on their whole population. Isn't that part of your vision?
It is. I really believe that we can take the keys of the kingdom that Jesus took back from the pit of hell, and part of that reversed the curse that was bestowed on Adam and Eve, which involved the death of the planet and its people. And I think it's time we really learned what that means. So we have, right where you visited, Lance, we're so far ahead now, over almost 2 years into a 14-year project to prove that we can rebuild degraded soil into Garden of Eden-like environment. But let me also say this in response to what Mercedes mentioned. Two things. Number one, bone broth, collagen, those are excellent for people with sensitivities because they're very gut friendly, and people are sensitive to pea, by the way, and pumpkin for all kinds of reasons as well. So those proteins are harder to digest. Bone broth and collagen are gut friendly. And secondly, I'll say this, Lance, about your visit to Edison's laboratory and Old McDonald's farm. The word that you and Johnny Enlow spoke over me and my wife, Nikki, was so amazing. I received it. And it's awesome for people to be able to not only get a chance to learn about health in January, but obviously, Lance, I'm extremely excited to really learn the vision that you have for this conference by allowing people like myself to reach this amazing audience of yours that are going to be showing up. And one thing I'd love to do, if you all will agree, maybe we'll do a little bit of a Q&A where we can get questions ahead of time.
Love that.
Because often we will share a message, and health is so personal, and the needs are so ubiquitous, people may not get exactly what they're looking for. And we can maybe pre-select some questions and try to cut through a lot of the confusion and differing opinions that are in the health world, because it's never been more divided. Some people say eat only animal food. Some people say eat only plant food. Animals will kill you. Plants will kill you. Let's get to the bottom of it. One thing I will promise, I will share with you a biblical way to eat that if you choose to believe the Bible is the word of God, you will be convicted that this is the truth. And I will unveil that in January. And I'm super excited to do it and appreciate and honored to be there. And yes, Mercedes, that's what Pam was right. I don't like to travel as much. I say it this way. I used to want to attend every one of my children's games and recitals. Now I want to attend their practices and rehearsals. So I'm trying to be home and present as much as I can. But when I can share a message with an audience of world changers, I would love to do it.
Well, that means a lot to me. And this is an audience of world changers that'll be there. LanceWallnau.com/summit. We've got an incredible group of people from entertainment fields, movie makers, and business leaders that are all going to be there. And each of them has their own world that they influence. If you have a question that you want to submit, now that this has been brought up, then write to freedom@lancewallnau.com, put on the subject line Summit, SUMMIT, and I will look for your questions and we'll put them in the queue for Dr. Rubin. Go to freedom@lancewallnau.com to send me an email there, and I will put your question into the summit. I want to thank you again, Doctor, for taking the time to be with us. And I can't wait to hear what you haven't talked about today that you're going to unveil fresh from Edison's laboratory, the latest insight that you've got, because this is going to change people's lives. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, folks, you know we are on a mission to make this a decade with a massive difference. I don't care what is happening in the world. I came right from Israel as things were happening. I went from there to Europe. And I'm telling you, we're put on the earth for such a time as this. God factored your life into the flow of history. You're here at the right time. Now you have to show up at a level 10. You have to show up mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally at the top of your game, because never has it been more necessary for believers to embody the power of the age to come. That's why your physical body is going to be catching up collagen, protein, muscle. I love where we're going with this. Every podcast is enlightening me as to what this agenda is really all about. Mercedes, you heard God on this one, and I'm delighted.
Thanks, Lance. As opposed to when I'm not hearing God on
Well,
other
you know,
things.
we have our
But
Our
on this
caveat in
one-
there.
we have our
one.
differences of opinion at times, but I'm telling you, I acknowledge it when you've nailed it.
I literally think this is going to be our best conference yet. I don't know why I feel that way. I fully expect miracle signs and wonders. We have our healing nights, but then the content that these experts are going to bring is these are missing pieces that you're probably been searching for decades. I mean, like people like me, and like I have up and down failed diets, you know, you're trying your best. And I literally had one time in my life where I was like, Lord, please just give me someone that has the answer, has the key to help me get healthy, you know, even beyond losing weight, like help me get healthy. And I remember like he literally delivered somebody to me at the coffee store and said, hey, she had a button that said, ask me how I lost 30 pounds. And I was like, okay. I mean, this is that for some of you, that you need to come hear what Dr. Jordan Rubin is talking about, to hear what Christy Nichol is saying, to hear what, you know, world-renowned cardiologist Dr. Chauncey Crandall is going to be talking about. And we have Shirley, the stem cell lady. I mean, you need to tune in for this. And if you can't be with us in person, don't worry, we have live stream, but please, please, please come down. It's going to be at the Trump Hotel in Miami, Florida. It's the Trump Doral in Miami, Florida. And you don't want to miss it. Get out of the cold, come in January and start the year off right.
And I want to add this. If you've been suffering from brain fog, weird fatigue, and it's like, well, I just don't have the energy, that's the reason why we're doing it this year, because this is your winter blues blowout strategy. Do this. I'm going to have to cut off right now. LanceWallnau.com/summit. Make sure you take action, and we're going to see you again tomorrow. This program went really fast. God bless you. See you tomorrow.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world